President Trump taking on the border crisis by declaring a national emergency.
We're going to confront the national security crisis on our southern border, and we're going to do it one way or the other. Whether it's $8 billion or $2 billion or $1.5 billion, it's going to build a lot of walls. We're getting it done because we have an invasion of drugs, invasion of gangs, invasion of people, and it's unacceptable.
Here to react, former acting ICE director and Fox News contributor Tom Homan. Welcome, Tom.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Now, what do you make of this? This is obviously a very controversial decision. You know, Trump taking heat from the left, obviously, and also from some on the right. What do you make of his decision to declare a national emergency? Okay,
I think it's the right decision. And let me explain something that a lot of people don't understand, because I didn't want this bill signed. I mean, there's some terrible, terrible language in here. I was hoping for a CR for 7 to 10 days to try to change some of the language in here that I think will entice more illegal immigration. However, when I talk to people on the Hill and in the White House, the Democrats weren't going to allow a CR, right? The CR has to start in the House. They had the president in the corner. Either sign this terrible bill or shut the government down. So he chose, I think, the smartest way. You know what? Okay, I'll sign it, and I'll take some executive actions. I'll declare an emergency and try to fix it. Once again, this president is on his own to do the right thing for the American people.
Tom, explain one or two things in the bill that you don't like, because you're exactly right. They wanted him to sign bad ideas, which effectively happened.
First of all, they're funding ICE for less beds they currently have filled. So unless they move some money around, ICE has to release people. Illegal immigration is going up, and they want to take beds away. That just don't make sense. That's just dumb. But the thing that really angers me is the section in there that parents and sponsors of UACs cannot be held accountable. A parent or sponsor in this country can hire a criminal organization, put their child in the hands of a criminal organization, be smuggled this country, and they can remain in the shadows. Up to this point, parents and sponsors were worried about ICE getting their information from HHS and being held accountable. What this does is every parent and sponsor in the country now that was holding back, they're afraid of ICE action, is going to say, you know what, now I can bring my child, because this bill just gave me amnesty. I won't say amnesty. It gives me protection from enforcement of any kind. No prosecution, can't be put in criminal proceedings. So two things. That's going to increase the number of UACs from this country. So the hypocrisy of the Democrats, I don't want to hear another word about family separations and zero tolerance. When families were separate because the parent was prosecuted, they just wrote legislation to put children in the hands of criminal organizations. That is ridiculous, and it's far worse than anything that this administration has ever done.
Yeah. Tom, you know, I got to ask you about the race to the left from left-wingers on this issue. You now have Beto O'Rourke and Kirsten Gillibrand saying they would tear down the border wall. Take a listen. I want to get your reaction.
You know, would you, if you could, would you take the wall down now? Here.
Yes.
Like you have a wall.
Absolutely.
Knock it down.
I'd take the wall down.
What about a proposal from Beto O'Rourke to actually remove some of the existing wall? He was talking about El Paso, but the idea of dismantling some of the wall, good idea, bad idea?
I could look at it and see which part he means and why, and if it makes sense, I could support it.
But does this surprise you at all?
I mean, these people are going to have to run in a general election. It's insanity.
No, look, they've gone so far left. The best thing that ever happened for this administration is these people go so far left. I think most American people understand. Beto O'Rourke obviously isn't looking at the data. Every place they built a wall. Every single place they built a wall. Illegal immigration has decreased. As far as Gillibrand, as a native New Yorker, she's an embarrassment to the state of New York. She doesn't know what she'll change her mind tomorrow. She used to be pro-immigration enforcement. She used to want law enforcement to enforce immigration law. Then she wanted to run for senator and threw all out the window. Then when she ran in midterm saying, you reelect me to my Senate seat, and I want to serve out my full term. That lasted, what, 60 days? So, you know what, Gillibrand, what she says doesn't matter to me. She'll change her mind tomorrow. She's an embarrassment to the state of New York. I'm a native New Yorker. I'm embarrassed for her.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's true. Tom Homan, thank you very much
Thanks
for
being here.
Appreciate it. Good stuff.
Thanks for having me.
But first, my open. I told you before, being a leader means making tough and many times unpopular decisions. This week, we watched a leader declare a national emergency where one was unequivocally and undoubtedly needed. It was vintage Donald Trump. And the reaction? Vintage fake news left. Within a 36-hour period, we watched the president sign a bill to keep the government open, declare a national emergency because of the security and humanitarian crisis at our southern border. We watched an attorney general be sworn in and watched the former deputy chief of the FBI blow himself, the Department of Justice, and the FBI up. We watched the economy reaching new heights, the left ignoring the blackface debacle because Democrats, from the Virginia governor to the AG to Joy Behar, were all involved. But what are we talking about today? Is there really an emergency at the border? The left is calling it a political stunt and a total waste of money. Some even threatening to take the barrier down if built.
Would you, if you could, would you take the wall down now? Here.
Yes.
Like you have a wall.
Absolutely.
Knock it down.
I'd take the wall down.
And do you think...
But make no mistake, Donald Trump will secure our border. The left are lying to you when they say there is no crisis, that the president is concocting the nation's immigration emergency. They object to the president's characterization of the influx as an invasion when they say the effort to protect us is a waste of money and that the president is simply engaging in a political stunt. A primer. Our southern border is overwhelmed by illegal immigration, gang violence, crime, drugs, and human trafficking. In fiscal year 2019, the DHS has already seen a 136% increase in the number of family units and unaccompanied children each month. 40,720 inadmissibles have entered our southwest border in the last 4 months. Thousands of violent criminals crossed that border, endangering Americans. In the last 2 years alone, ICE has arrested 266,000 aliens with criminal records, including those convicted of 4,000 homicides, 30,000 sex crimes, and 100,000 assaults. And if you don't believe those numbers, just look at the jails in Texas. 186 illegal aliens and 276,000 criminal aliens were booked in local jails between 2011 and 2018. Last year, ICE removed more than 10,000 gang members already in our country illegally. Drugs are flowing across the border, devastating American families. Every week, 300 Americans die of heroin overdoses, of which 90% comes over that southern border. In 2019, ICE made over 1,500 human trafficking arrests, almost all of which were for sex trafficking. 20,000 children were illegally smuggled into the United States during the month of December alone. If this isn't a crisis at a border, it's hard to know what is. Emergency is just the recognition of what other politicians have blatantly lied about to the American people so that they could fill their coffers with willing and many times illegal Democrat voters, since they have lost the heart of most Americans. So what happens to these people? When captured, they claim asylum, which of course they could have claimed at a legal port of entry. But even then, they're released and given a court date. They don't even bother, most of them, to return, and 80% of them are not really eligible for asylum anyway, and their claims are ultimately rejected by immigration judges. But they don't care. They're off somewhere in America, maybe in your town, maybe even having a baby, which gives them free access to just about everything. Now, the president did everything he possibly could before declaring the state of emergency. And if you want to criticize anyone, criticize Congress, who dilly-dallied since 1986 when President Reagan declared the last amnesty. They are so jealous of the other party as well as this outsider president that they refuse to give him a win when their concern should be about giving the American people a win. They refuse to even consider that every day they refuse to negotiate or work on our behalf, 130 Americans died from opioid overdoses, and 90% of the heroin comes across that border. The left, however, instead of recognizing the danger to Americans, is determined to do nothing but criticize President Trump.
I think all of us will come to regret this. It is not the right way for the president to try and end run Congress.
If it was an emergency every time a president of the United States couldn't get what they wanted from Congress, we would be in a constant state of emergency.
I think the only national emergency is the humanitarian crisis that President Trump has created at our border by separating families from children and treating people who need our help inhumanely. I think this is manufactured.
But in the end, the president is right.
We will have a national emergency, and we will then be sued, and they will sue us in the Ninth Circuit, even though it shouldn't be there, and we will possibly get a bad ruling, and then we'll get another bad ruling, and then we'll end up in the Supreme Court, and hopefully we'll get a fair shake, and we'll win in the Supreme Court.
I can't imagine that the Supreme Court would not support the declaration of an emergency, given Congress's repeated failure to act, the president's repeated attempt to make the Democrats act. All these presidents have declared national emergencies. Now listen up. I've got news for you doubting Thomases. This president is on firm legal ground. Both the Constitution and Congress have given him the right to declare emergencies as an executive action. Youngstown versus Ohio, 343 U.S. 579. According to Justice Jackson, the president is at his zenith of power here, where Congress has delegated to him the authority, and his own authority is at its maximum. He possesses his own right, plus all that Congress has delegated. In these circumstances, and in these only, may he be said to personify a federal sovereignty. It's real simple, folks. What do you want? Should America be a nation state? Should we be a country defined by borders? Or should we simply be a repository for anyone who wants to come here? Should we be a refuge for the rest of the world to come for education, health care, housing, food stamps, and yes, even Social Security? And should they get a license, a free college education, while American kids have to pay for theirs? And of course, should they get the right to vote? Where do you stand? Let me know what you think on my Facebook, Twitter, and at Judge Janine.